Prince William is reportedly at the center of a series of major moves that unfolded on June 5, 2026, a day that now has royal insiders asking serious questions about what is really changing inside the monarchy. According to multiple reports, everything that happened between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. that day followed a very precise timeline. And what began in the early morning quickly escalated into something far more complex. It started at 8:15 a.m. A confidential executive document, internally identified as K2026046, was signed into effect behind closed doors. No announcement, no public ceremony, just immediate implementation. At first, there was no visible reaction outside Kensington Palace. But internally, sources claim the document triggered a chain of administrative actions that had already been in preparation for some time. And then came the first major shift. Reports suggest that Princess Diana's legacy was placed under a new layer of exclusive guardianship through William's office at Kensington Palace. This reportedly includes her name, image rights, historical archives, and related materials tied to her public identity. For decades, Diana's legacy has remained one of the most globally recognized elements of royal history, and that is exactly why this development immediately drew attention. But this was only the beginning. By mid-morning, reports claim a code-red security protocol was activated inside Kensington Palace. Access to the sunken garden, Diana's memorial site, was temporarily restricted, while internal security procedures were reportedly escalated. Soon after, 3 senior security officials were reportedly removed from their duties amid concerns over information handling, adding another layer of tension to an already unusual day. And while some viewed these actions as routine internal enforcement, others believe they signal a much broader shift in how royal legacy and control are being managed behind the scenes. But the legal implications may extend even further than the palace itself. Reports point to a privacy ruling in France in late 2025, which allegedly became part of a broader legal framework now being used to protect royal image rights internationally. If accurate, that framework could significantly change how Diana's name and legacy are used in commercial and media contexts. And that's where things begin to extend beyond the palace walls. Because questions are now being raised about how these developments could affect media projects and branding activities connected to Prince Harry and Meghan in California. According to reports, legal communications were later sent to representatives connected to the Sussexes, warning that any commercial use of Diana's legacy must avoid implying official endorsement without authorization. But the most unexpected developments of the day were still ahead. At around 10:30 a.m., a senior legal team reportedly arrived at the UK Intellectual Property Office in Newport, Wales, and what followed was a large-scale filing involving 1,245 historic artifacts, pieces of jewelry, and personal items once connected to Princess Diana. According to reports, this triggered a classification shift under a measure known as Clause 14B of the Royal Heritage Inventory Decree, placing these items under a new level of national heritage protection. The move immediately sparked debate, with supporters calling it preservation and critics questioning the concentration of authority behind such decisions. And just when the situation seemed to stabilize, another major development reportedly unfolded later that day. Inside Windsor Castle, a closed-door meeting lasting under an hour allegedly led to a decision involving portions of the Duchy of Cornwall's commercial property portfolio. Reports claim selected assets were approved for sale, generating significant liquidity and raising new questions about the future financial direction of the Prince of Wales's estate. King Charles was reportedly present during the meeting, but what was discussed inside remains unclear. And that uncertainty is exactly what continues to fuel speculation about what really changed on June 5, 2026, and what it means for the future of the monarchy. As the day continued, sources claim William's actions went beyond symbolism or public messaging. Reports suggest that within the same Windsor meeting, Two senior financial advisors connected to the broader royal administration were removed from their positions. The official reasoning was described as alignment and long-term strategic planning, but insiders say the timing raised questions, and almost immediately after, a new wave of internal reaction followed. According to accounts circulating later that day, concerns were raised about the sudden changes. William reportedly responded by emphasizing institutional unity and a long-term vision for stability inside the monarchy. But what happened next shifted the focus entirely. Reports indicate that financial assets generated earlier in the day were not simply absorbed into existing royal structures. Instead, they were reportedly redirected into an independent trust model connected to humanitarian and environmental initiatives linked to Princess Diana's legacy. Supporters describe this as a long-term preservation strategy designed to ensure Diana's influence continues through structured charitable frameworks. But critics argue it represents something far more complex, a restructuring of influence itself. By mid-afternoon, the situation reportedly escalated beyond the United Kingdom. At approximately 3 p.m., legal communications allegedly began circulating toward representatives connected to Prince Harry and Meghan in California. Sources claim the message focused on commercial branding and media projects, warning against the use of protected royal associations tied to Diana's legacy without formal authorization. What made this unusual, according to observers, is that it was not treated as a standard intellectual property notice. Instead, it was reportedly based on legal interpretations that trace back to a French court ruling in late 2025, a case that at the time seemed limited, but now appears to be part of a much broader legal framework. If accurate, that framework could redefine how historical royal imagery is used in global media and commercial projects. And that immediately raises a bigger question. How far does this protection actually extend? Because many of Harry and Meghan's media ventures have naturally referenced Diana's life and legacy, something that has long shaped public interest in their work. According to reports, legal teams began reviewing whether future projects could face increased scrutiny if they were seen as relying too heavily on protected legacy elements. And as the afternoon progressed, discussions reportedly became more serious. Sources describe legal advisors evaluating multiple scenarios, from compliance adjustments to potential international disputes. But perhaps the most striking part of the entire sequence is how it unfolded, because this was not a single announcement. It was a chain of coordinated actions, legal, financial, and administrative, all unfolding within hours of each other. And by late afternoon, observers began to notice a pattern. Each step appeared to connect to the next. Legal groundwork, followed by structural changes to heritage assets, followed by financial restructuring, followed by international legal communications. Whether intentional or coincidental, the timing created the impression of a carefully synchronized sequence rather than isolated decisions. Then came the most critical point of the day. The 4 p.m. deadline. According to reports, this was the final window for any legal objections, appeals, or administrative challenges. But as the deadline passed, no formal counterfilings was submitted. No appeals, no competing motions, nothing on record. And that silence became one of the most discussed outcomes of the entire day. Some analysts interpret it as confidence in the legality of the framework. Others suggest it reflects hesitation from potential challengers still assessing their position. But either way, the absence of opposition allowed the measures to move into their final stage. And according to reports, that final stage marked a major shift in how Princess Diana's legacy is now managed. A centralized structure linked to Kensington Palace reportedly now oversees historical materials, images, and heritage assets connected to her name. Supporters describe it as preservation. Critics describe it as consolidation of control. And that divide quickly extended into discussions about Queen Camilla, with sources claiming that access procedures to certain Diana-related Materials have now become significantly more restricted and formalized. Observers noted that even the atmosphere around the palace reportedly shifted after the deadline passed, as if a long-debated transition had quietly finalized itself. And through it all, King Charles's reported role remained a central focus. Sources suggest he was aware of key decisions throughout the process and did not publicly oppose them. Some analysts interpret this as alignment between Charles and William on the future direction of the monarchy. Others see it as silent acquiescence to a rapidly advancing plan. But either way, it adds another layer to an already complex picture. Because what happened on June 5, 2026 is still being debated. Was it a coordinated restructuring of legacy, law, and finance, or simply a series of unrelated decisions that happened to converge in a single day? And then, just as attention seemed to settle, reports claim that at around 4:15 p.m., an official vehicle arrived at Kensington Palace carrying a handwritten note from King Charles. The contents remain unknown, and that uncertainty is exactly what continues to fuel speculation about what really happened and what comes next. What makes this final development so unusual is not just the reported message itself, but when it arrived. According to sources, the handwritten note reached Kensington Palace only minutes after the 4:00 p.m. deadline had passed, when all official filing windows were already closed. And that timing immediately changed how insiders interpreted the entire day. Because after hours of coordinated legal, financial, and administrative activity, this final communication reportedly introduced a new layer of uncertainty. Insiders describe a sudden shift in atmosphere inside the palace, as attention moved from completed actions to what this message could still mean moving forward. But the contents remain unknown, and that uncertainty has only intensified speculation about whether it was symbolic, procedural, or part of a wider internal message from King Charles. At this stage, even those familiar with the day's events reportedly disagree on its significance. Some believe it was a final confirmation of alignment between Charles and William, while others suggest it may signal unresolved, internal tension that has not yet been made public. And that division reflects a larger question surrounding everything that unfolded on June 5, 2026. Was this a fully coordinated restructuring of royal legacy, legal authority, and financial control, or a series of independent actions that simply converged under extraordinary timing? Because when you look at the full sequence, the pattern is difficult to ignore. Legal foundations reportedly connected to earlier rulings, administrative changes within royal offices, financial restructuring tied to heritage, linked initiatives, and international legal communications reaching across the Atlantic. Each development appears separate on the surface, but together they form a sequence that unfolded within hours of each other. By the end of the day, attention had fully shifted from internal palace operations to broader implications outside the United Kingdom, particularly regarding how Diana's legacy is now managed, protected, and interpreted across different legal and institutional frameworks. Supporters view the reported changes as a long-term effort to preserve her influence through structured governance and controlled access to historical materials. Critics, however, argue that it represents a consolidation of authority over one of the most publicly recognized royal legacies in modern history. And that disagreement has now become central to how the entire day is being interpreted. Because June 5 did not end with a public statement. It ended with unanswered questions, and perhaps the most important one remains unresolved. What exactly was communicated in that final message from King Charles? And why was it delivered after all official deadlines had already closed? That question continues to fuel discussion among royal observers, legal analysts, and commentators across both sides of the Atlantic. And as more details emerge, it is becoming clear that June 5, 2026 may be remembered not for a single event, but for a chain of decisions that changed how the monarchy is perceived behind the scenes. Now, if you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the video reach more people. And I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think these reported events reflect a coordinated plan inside the monarchy, or just a series of unrelated developments that happen to align on the same day? Let me know in the comments below.